Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a mental health condition that is triggered by a terrifying event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. In this episode, we hear about mental health caused by the workplace. We introduce you to Kevin, a retired police officer, and Andrew, a medical doctor. Kevin knew he wanted to be a police officer since childhood, with a desire to help and support others. After experiencing many traumatic incidents on the job, the effects of this trauma began to impact Kevin's mental health. Kevin shares openly and honestly of his story of being diagnosed with PTSD and his journey to health and healing. This is in regard to men's mental health.
My name's Kevin Roy. I am a retired RCMP officer. I served from 2008 is when I first got into Depot in Regina and went to training for 6 months, and I retired in 2018. So I'm gonna try the best I can to share my story and my own personal struggles and constant battle against mental health issues that have plagued me over the last bunch of years, all kind of originating when I got PTSD in the RCMP. And also kind of what I'm dealing with today. As you can see, I'm wearing a hat here, and that's my band that I'm in right now, and kind of the happier part of the story is what I'm working on right now for my own self-fulfillment and growth and self-discovery. But there's dark parts of the story too, so I'm going to attempt the best I can to kind of share what I've gone through, and hopefully it can help or inspire, or at least be someone that's on the same page as what maybe the viewers have gone through themselves. So I guess in a nutshell, I grew up in Ontario. I moved out to Depot and left my family and friends all behind me back in Ontario. It was a real big challenge for me. I was 27. It was scary. It was a big life step for me to do that. And I think a lot of us get to that point when we're in our 20s and 30s where we have to kind of really leave the nest and step out on our own. So this was my big life challenge, just go do this. And I had a lot of reasons growing up, family issues I went through, and I had a younger brother that passed away, and a lot of motivators and contributors that made me pick the field of policing as my actual job. My story was a little bit unique in that I never had the background that a lot of traditional police officers had. You know, you meet most police officers, and a lot of people I met in the field, they have multiple generations, especially RCMP. Like RCMP was formed in 1874, and I literally knew people that they could trace back the lineage on a family tree in the RCMP going all the way back to like the first few troops and the March West. Like they had great-great-grandparents that were in that. I didn't have any of that. I literally had never met a cop in my life that wasn't just a police officer that I had met, just, you know, Kevin Roy out in the public, and I met this cop and whatever. I'd never had anyone in my personal life that had done the job. So I was very raw in that regards. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but my life experience and my personality and the kind of things I brought to the table were what they were looking for in the modern police officer. Someone that can be approachable, someone that is kindness and that kind of stuff. It wasn't just I'm coming from a military background and I had this set of skills. So I found that as I was kind of growing and building up my career in the RCMP very early on, unfortunately that kind of made me kind of sometimes stand out like a sore thumb a little bit, because the skills and the experiences that I had that made me a good police officer, relatable and a very empathetic, they didn't always mesh perfectly in the very militant style, and not to pick on the RCMP, but just that policing in general can be. Traditionally, if you line up 100 police officers, like probably honestly 85 to 90% of them are like type A, alpha, very like boom, 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 very regimented, very hard hitting. And that wasn't me, that never has been me. And I made a promise when I first got into policing that I wasn't gonna lose that part of myself that I love the most, which was just, I care about other people, I like to put people first, and that compassion and that love for like my fellow man, so to speak. And I got in, and early on I had a few traumatic incidents that happened. Unfortunately, it kind of happened in policing, and without getting into too much inner details of those, they were pretty traumatic for me, and I was diagnosed with PTSD within the first year and a half that I was in the RCMP. And being not necessarily the good soldier in my DNA, but just feeling that I got into this job because I really wanted to inspire change, and I wanted to try to help other people see that, hey, police officers are just the, Joe Blow. Like, they're the guy or girl that's beside you at the checkout line at the grocery store. They're your next door neighbor. They're the coach of your kid's softball team. Like, that was twofold. That was one part of my goal always as a police officer, is just to try to show people that we're different. On every single call, I wanted to do that. And then the other part was just to help people like me that went through issues when I was growing up, and try to be there to help out people that can't help themselves. And I always felt, and I still feel today, that I think nobly a big majority, a big percentage of people in the policing profession get into it with that intent. It's just they kind of lose sight of it after a little while, and it's very hard to kind of keep that original mindset as you're in the job, because it's messy and you're getting your hands really, really dirty with a lot of stuff. And the politics are so much thicker and messier than you ever could possibly imagine until you're in the job living it. And unfortunately, as my PTSD kind of got worse and worse, and again, I was saying I was trying to be the good soldier, I just kept trying to work through it. And I kept saying, I have a job, the government is giving me the authority and a good career and a good wage to basically go out there, and yes, I'm putting my life on the line, but I'm paid, like I'm paid handsomely to do it in my eyes. And I owe an obligation to my country and my people and my family and my community, even down to just myself and my neighbors and everyone in my life. I owe it to them to go out there and work hard every single day. And the worse and worse my PTSD would get, it was this vicious circle where I would continually be trying to push through it, and I'm making it worse over and over and over again. And I would have incidents where I'd get spit in the face by a person with hepatitis C, and I would be going and get my blood checked every couple weeks for 6 straight months, not knowing if I'm gonna find out on this now most recent report that, yeah, I do have hep C and I'm gonna die young, and I have a young infant son, and I'm a single dad, and I'm gonna orphan him, all because some scumbag didn't want to get arrested at 5 o'clock in the morning and spits in my face. Those things take a toll on you, and when you're trying to push through it and be the bigger person and be that tough guy and be that role model and all these great things, you're not allowing yourself to actually ever be the victim, because being a victim is weak, and being a victim isn't strong, and being a victim is such a dirty, ugly word. But not allowing myself to ever actually be the victim made it worse and worse and worse, and cut it deeper and deeper and deeper. So I developed PTSD, as I said, and I kept working through it. And I got to a point in my story in 2015 where I was desperately just clinging to any hope of any reasons or semblance of drive or motivation or anything to enjoy the job. And the universe kind of showed me a little bit of a tiny light in the door to maybe kind of get my life on a different track and a different path, because the path I was on was leading to statistics. I was just going to be another police officer that killed themselves. And it's very, very difficult for me to admit that, but that's the cold, honest truth. And I would have dreams about it all the time. I would think about it all the time. And the only thing that stopped me from doing it is the fact that I have now an 8-year-old son. I'm a single dad, and I could never do that to him. And I have a younger brother, like I said, that passed away when he was 6.5 from immune disease, and he never got to live a full life. It was taken away from him, and it wasn't his choice, it wasn't his say. So that always haunted me, that how could I do this? But truthfully, as sad as as hard as it is for me to admit, if I didn't have those things, I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you right now. I would have, because I felt painted into a corner. I felt that I wanted to not feel these feelings and emotions, but I was feeling them. And I didn't feel that they were okay, because nobody around me was telling me that it's okay to feel these things. It's okay to feel scared when you're going to be going to a call. It's okay to feel stress and anxiety. And it's okay to have days where you literally can't get out of your bed because you don't feel any motivation to do anything. All you want to do is wake up 2 in the afternoon, go eat, and then go right back to bed again and sleep the rest of the day, because nothing else feels better than going into that bed. To me, all I was being told, or even led to believe, was that that's lazy and unmotivated, and I'm just trying to hide from my problems. But all those things, they weren't my fault. Like, I wasn't by my own personal choosing. So sometimes when you feel that, and I hope a lot of people can relate with this that are watching this, like, there's a lot of us that feel that way, where you don't want to feel any of this stuff. If anything, you're ashamed and you're embarrassed, and you're like, I just want all these feelings to just go away, because they're horrible and they're the worst feelings in the world. So I kind of got to that point, and my tipping point where I finally left the RCMP was that, like I said, the universe kind of opened up for me. And some people watching this probably might even be familiar with this story, because it's a crazy story, but I was out doing a bar walk where we kind of go through the bar and make sure no one's drinking and driving. And we do what we call flying the flag. Every police, detachment in the world kind of has sections that will go out to the bar at nighttime and let people know, hey, we're out and about, don't do anything silly. So I went out and I was at a bar called the Central Pub in Kamloops here, in Kamloops, BC. And I went out with my auxiliary, which is our volunteer. It's my good friend of mine, Tyler. And we saw a co-worker who, her brother had just passed away that day. So she was at the wake, and I guess I've been asked many times before, can you get up on stage and sing for us on a karaoke night and things like that, because everyone in town kind of knew I liked singing. And I always declined, but I think it was, in hindsight, it was just the fact that she lost her brother and I'd lost my brother years before that kind of hit me even more. And she asked me, okay, Roy, can you sing a song for me? It would mean everything. My family would love it. And I just, for whatever reason that day, decided, yeah, I was going to do it. And I made sure it was okay. And I called my dispatcher and said, hey, is it okay if I, have a couple minutes? I'm just going to sing a song really quick. They're like, yeah, for sure. We'll just mark you on break. And I got my auxiliary, Tyler, to stand by the door. And he was going to give me one of these symbols if anything came through, an emergency or whatever. And of course, I would just drop the mic and go. But I kind of figured, hey, 5 minutes. I could literally spend that, in the bathroom or in a lineup at Tim Hortons, right? So I went up and I said, the only condition is I get to pick the song. And I picked Superman by Five for Fighting, because I thought every single line of that song relates and speaks to the feeling of being a police officer. I'm not scared to fly. I'm not that naive, and all these words about just having to be the strong one, when really you're just as weak as everyone else on the inside, but you're trying to put on that S on your chest and be strong for everybody else. It really spoke to me, the lyrics of the song, and I've always loved that song. And I thought, if I'm going to sing with my uniform, I want to at least give I'm not going to sing, F the police or something, right? I'm not going to sing something bad. So I sang the song, and it got a way better reaction than I could ever possibly have imagined. There's probably 200 people in the bar. Everybody lost their minds. When you watch the video now in hindsight, you can't even literally hear me sing the last couple notes of the song because it's so loud. And about 30 people pulled their phones out and started filming it. And within about 2 days, the first video that got posted online went viral, had hundreds of thousands of views. They started getting, the news started picking it up. Oh, this cop in Kamloops is gone viral for a good reason. Like, police are actually, for once, are in the news for something good. And then they ended up, someone else posted another video which was longer and better quality, and they posted that on the Ellen DeGeneres page. So then that went viral, and that had like 1 million views, and they just were compounding. And it would have been the greatest moment of my life, because I love music, and that's been always my lifelong passion. Unfortunately, the powers that be really dropped the ball, and they had this golden egg in their hand of PR and publicity and positivity. And I have a story I wish I could tell to people, and hey, like, police, we're good people. Like, I don't wake up in the morning as a police officer thinking, oh, I wonder how many bad guys I can arrest for jaywalking today, or how many tickets I can give for someone going 5 kilometers over the speed limit. Like, that never motivated me. What motivated me was calls, or the section I was in for a year and a half, where I would try to help out people that were on like, if there was a suicidal call, I would be the one that would kind of try to go to that call, and I would make sure I could talk to them and relate to them, and talk to people off of bridges, and really dramatic stuff. And I took a lot of pride and importance in that, because I really wanted to speak to people from something from Kevin Roy, not just the uniform I'm wearing, right? And that inspired me, and I would have been a good person to kind of speak on a larger scale for this, and the whole world wanted to know, like, because nothing like that had ever happened before August 31st, 2015. There wasn't videos you can find online of Shaq playing basketball with, police officers in Florida. That didn't happen before the video happened. Like, it just didn't exist. Nobody ever accepted that it would be something real. And then the sweet irony of it was that the police and everybody internally were, hey, let's just let it blow over. I literally was told verbatim by my boss, just let it blow over and don't say anything to anyone and don't give any statements. And I'm like, why would we let this blow over? This is fantastic. This gets to show everybody that we're good people and we're just like them. This is my lifelong dream as a police officer, to do this. I try to do this every call, and we've literally shown millions of people on one video. And nope, just let it blow over. Just let it blow over. We're not even gonna have you go on calls for a couple weeks. We'll just have you kind of just sit in the office and do paperwork because, you know, we don't want it. What if someone doesn't like it? And what if someone doesn't like it? If you read the comments, there's literally 20,000 comments, and all the comments, every one person that would say something negative, there would literally be 100 people that would say something positive. And then they would 100 people would pile on that negative person. Oh, what's your problem? Like, this is something good for once. So I explained it to my bosses that I think for the first time, if you don't like police, let's be honest, there's countless examples, like literally countless, of reasons why your feelings of negativity towards the police are justified and they're sound. I think police they don't like people of you know, ethnic backgrounds or people of color or anything. Cool. There's a million examples you can find that will prove what your thoughts are 100% accurate. If you do believe in the police and you do believe that, yes, there's bad apples, but there's also a lot of really good people with good hearts that are trying to do something for a pure, just reason and are trying to keep, you know, order and everything in our society so it doesn't go to pure chaos, there's not really too many good examples to do that and show that on a large scale. Maybe on a micro scale, you know that cop up the street that's a nice guy and coaches your kid's team, but there's nothing on a large scale to show that. And we finally had this, and it was brushed under the table, under the rug. So what happened in that irony is that the CTV News and everyone picked up on this, and that this poor cop, our karaoke cop, as I was called, is getting thrown under the bus, and he's going to be in trouble, and this is horrible. And it ended up backlashing against the police, and I was just kind of, again, brushed under the rug. So that really took a major toll on me with my psyche as well, and it kind of was like, why am I even doing this at this point? And then we kind of fast forward a couple months, and I tried to do like a fundraiser for United Way, and I found that people internally weren't even supporting that. I raised $5,000 for this thing called Jail and Bail that we have in Kamloops. It's just, in a nutshell, it's a fundraiser that is done every single year where local celebrities and local people of like politicians and radio hosts and lawyers and people that kind of have some level of importance, so to speak, when they're in the public eye, they basically have to raise like anywhere from $100 to $1,000 to get freed from a fake jail. And it's a fun little fundraiser to raise money for United Way. So I did that and reenacted my karaoke cop video and thought this would be a fun way for me to raise money for a good cause. So anyone internally in my job that is jealous of the attention or thinks that I was out of line in their own justified mind, everyone's entitled to their opinion. Oh, I don't think Kevin Roy handled himself. That's not how police officers should handle themselves. Hey, I don't agree with you, but you're entitled to your opinion. Anyone that thought that, you can't argue with the fact that now at least I'm trying to use this for something positive for our community. And I raised $5,000, raised more money than the detachment had raised in the previous 4 years. And not, like $200 I think total was raised by the detachment. And that was all in a fundraiser for a mini fridge. That everyone bought a ticket for $20. So we sold like 10 tickets for the mini fridge because everyone was like, hey, $10, I can win a $300 mini fridge, why not? They didn't care about supporting my cause. And there wasn't one person, the day I got fake arrested and did my fundraiser, not one person showed up from my detachment. So I share all of this because this was the things, the experiences I was going through. And it was something that was supposed to be so positive was just tainted by the negativity and the culture of that kind of atmosphere. And then at that point I was broken. I was like, I can't do this. It's sucking the life out of me. I would be waiting for a dispatch call. So they had a lot of different call signs when you're on a different when you're on a different schedule. But there was times where I was Bravo 12, for example. I was on the B watch section, so Bravo, and my unit number is 12. So I'd be sitting there and I'd be shaking uncontrollably, and I couldn't even control it. I'd be like, what is wrong with me? Like, am I having like a nervous breakdown? My hands would be trembling and shaking, just sitting in the cop car, waiting for the radio call to come through saying, Bravo 12, we got a call for you. Okay, and then I'd answer it. When I'd be on the call, I'd be perfectly fine. I'd be driving, I'd be fine. If I knew with concise direction of what I had to do, I'd be okay. But those moments in between, the anticipation and the fear of what's coming next, am I gonna get railroaded, am I gonna get messed over by my superiors, or are my colleagues gonna back me up on a call? Am I gonna have to pull my gun out and some bad guy is, you know, with his kid and his wife and, you know, he's reaching his hand into his pocket and I don't know that he has a phone in there. but he might be reaching for a gun and he's gonna pull it out and it looks kind of like a gun because he's 30 feet away, and I gotta make a quick decision whether to shoot this guy and save that kid, or I hesitate because maybe it's a phone and now he kills the kid. Like, it was terrifying, that feeling, and it broke me as a person, and I couldn't do it anymore. So I made the really hard decision to retire, and that was in 2018. I was on stress leave for a couple years, where I literally was just sitting at home trying to live every day, just literally trying to survive. And at that point, I finally was like, I could do this for 10 more years, milk the system, so to speak, just collect a paycheck, and I'm just like on a hamster wheel at this point. I'm not moving forward, and I'm not actually making any progress in my life towards healing. I need to let go and kind of pull that Band-Aid off. And that's when I left the RCMP. So with me, I think the biggest thing that I experienced that at least is relatable with everyone else, because anyone watching this, I mean, if you are a police officer and you're experiencing these kind of troubles and issues yourself, I mean, I was there. I know that feeling, and you're definitely not alone. Even though when you're in that spot, you feel like you're alone. You feel like every other cop has got their stuff together, and that's why they're police officers, and you're letting down the system, you're letting down yourself, you're a bad, defective police officer. And it's the sad part of it is that you're probably one of the better police officers, because you're actually caring, and you that empathy and all those feelings and emotions that cause anxiety and depression and PTSD and the stress. Though it's that double-edged sword. Like, it's because you care, ironically, that you end up kind of getting almost hit harder with these issues than the person that's just a robot and they're detached and they can compartmentalize. I envy those people sometimes, because I could never do that. And if you're not a police officer and you're watching this, I mean, in one last ditch, reaching out now that I'm long past the career now, 3 years past retired, and doing music full time and chasing my own personal lifelong dream and trying to make myself happy, I can at least still show you that, like, hey, like, police officers are normal people. Like, we are still that exact same person, but even more relatable and even more normal, because they're not all robots and they're not all just automatrons that are wearing uniforms, and we're all just the exact same. It's not the case. Like, we feel that pain, you cut us, we bleed, just no different than anybody else. So I know we're going to kind of talk a little bit about, like, the feelings and emotions of being in that dark place. I found when I was especially near the ending, like, there was a lot of days where I would lay in bed, and I would, like I said before, I would be in bed till 2, 3 in the afternoon, and I would get up, have a bowl of cereal, and literally go back to bed. And the hardest part being a parent was that I always found with my son, if I had my son, it gave me some kind of focus or direction on to do something for the day. So I would drop him off at school, and then I'd come home. And for a while, I had a period of about 6 months where I would drop him off at school, get home by like 9 o'clock, and then I would sleep all the way through and set my alarm for like 1:30. And then I'd wake up at 1:30, and then I would go pick him up from school, bring him back, and then finish the day. And I would just, like, if it was like he wasn't there, it's like I was turning off the lights on my life. And I would turn back the lights on for him, because he was that driving motivator I needed to exist. But if he wasn't around, I just didn't exist. Like, I wasn't there anymore. And that's not living, right? Like, that's not healthy, and it wasn't helping me. Thankfully, I have a therapist that I see every few weeks, like clockwork. I got medicated. I was always afraid of taking medication for a long time, because I thought, if I have to take medicine, it means I'm crazy. And if I have to take antidepressants, it means that there's something broken or something wrong in me. And it took me a long time, and I think it actually was one of those, for a long time, I was a do as I say, not as I do kind of person when I'd be talking to people that were suicidal, but I didn't apply these things to myself. And it was after I told enough people on calls where they would be stressed out and scared and saying, I'm not taking my medications, I stopped taking my bipolar medication, or I stopped taking my antidepressants. And I started finding a good way to position that to them and discuss with them on why it's important to take that medication. I started realizing, like, why aren't I doing the same? Like, I need to do this as well. And the analogy I always kind of drew is that if I had diabetes, I would have no shame in taking insulin for my diabetes. It's just a chemical balance in my body that needs to be corrected. And it's no different when it comes to mental health. It's just, unfortunately, we stigmatize mental health in a horrible, horrible way as a society. And we're getting a lot better. You know, thankfully we have great examples all the time literally just a couple days ago, Simone Biles is missing a couple gold medal events in the Olympics as we speak. And it's because she's putting her mental health first. And she's literally the greatest gymnast of all time. And she's giving up a gold medal to protect her own mental health. And I think that hopefully shows people how normalized it should be. But I had a superior once that said it perfect. He's like, unfortunately, if you had a broken arm, Kevin, and you came into the detachment, everybody would sign your cast. They'd be happy to see you. They would understand that you couldn't work. Or if you broke your leg and you were literally laid up like this with your foot up on a cast and you couldn't even come in to do paperwork because you were so debilitated, everybody would sign that cast, or they would come visit you and give you flowers at the hospital room. But if something in your brain is a little bit broken and needs fixing, everybody just writes it off as, oh, he's lazy, or he doesn't want to work, or he's milking the system. And that was a big step to get past. So if reaching out in that regards, if anybody else is having those similar issues with medication, I mean, I was there and I know how hard it is. And I still have to tell myself when I'm feeling really good, I got to still take my medication because I'm feeling good because the medication's working and it's doing its job. That was really hard. And it's even hard right now to talk about it because it's even as far as I feel I've come, like it's embarrassing. Like it's just embarrassing to talk about that I have medication. But it's more important than that because my own mental health and my health itself, that's more important than any worry of what anyone else is going to think. Because at the end of the day, you know, if somebody's passing judgment on that, are their interests aligned with yours anyways, right? And that's kind of what I had to kind of come to that realization. And it was very, very difficult because unfortunately a lot of the cultures in our society aren't geared towards having that strength. My own personal journey, that was the biggest thing. And in doing a lot of self-reflecting over the last couple of years since I've retired, I've made more bigger strides in the last few years. To be totally blunt, once I just got, for lack of any better word, selfish. And I really thought to myself, like, I gotta stop caring what everybody else is thinking about what I'm doing or what my motivators are. And I'm just gonna do what makes me happy. Like, this is my life and I get one kick at this thing. And no matter what your beliefs are, all of our beliefs align, whether you think you end up in the dirt at the end of this and that's the end of the story, or you end up in heaven at the pearly gates, whatever your beliefs are, at the end of the day, the life you're living right now that's the current objective. Like that's your mission, and live it the best way you possibly can. And it was very easy to lose track of that when you're facing the blackness and it just feels like everything is despair. And I was talking about this the other day, but I had to kind of find inside myself, and it was very difficult to do it. And I know it's easier said than done, but I had to do a lot of soul searching and find that little tiny little spark and ember of like that excitement in me, and that my own personal Kevin Roy reason for being here. And for a long time, I really tied it together to my son. And I thought my reason to be here is just for my son. And it was very hard to reconcile that thought that I can't be the best version of me unless I find my reason for being here. Not being a great dad for him. Those two things are separate. Those are completely separate columns. Like, what is my actual reason for living and waking up every single day? And I truly believe now, having come through a lot of self-discovery and a lot of therapy and a lot of real gut check moments and looking in the mirror really hard, that every single one of us has that one special thing that we're great at, and we're very, very unique in itself. And that doesn't, this isn't like, you know, PBS commercial and nice and flowers and stuff. It might be just something that just brings you your own personal joy, but why not make that your priority in life, especially if you're feeling that kind of darkness? Because that's the tiny little light that the more you nurture it and the more you grow it, it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And going hand in hand with that, it was a big moment for me when I really kind of had to realize that, yeah, this isn't something that I can completely snuff out all of that darkness. Like, this is something that is part of who I am now. And I can't turn back the clock and make all the things I went through that created this PTSD monster inside of me. I can't make it disappear. It's always going to be a part of me. I've changed as a person. I'm different than I ever was before. But that doesn't have to also mean, to me at least, that myself or any of us that are in this together, all in the same kind of battle and facing our own demons and our own mental health issues, it doesn't mean that we're worse. And it doesn't mean that we're broken beyond repair. It just means that we're different, and just there's ways that we can find ourselves internally, albeit whether reaching out or knowing that there's other people around you that can actually provide that help if you just let them. Finding your own personal joy like I did in music. Like, it's the craziest dream ever to be a 40-year-old man that's in a band and try to actually make it successful and have an album that the world will listen to. I just thought, hey, I'd rather fail at that than succeed at being the best guy in the world at laying in bed every day. Because I was awesome at that. Like, I was really, really good at wasting an entire day. I could waste a day better than literally anybody. But a day where I'm at least doing something for myself, no matter what way you categorize that, isn't a waste to me. Like, it isn't by any measure. I'm at least trying to do something that's giving myself a little bit of joy. And that to me was like a tiny, tiny little chipping away at that monster inside of the PTSD and slaying that dragon. But that was a big part of it, was realizing that I'm gonna get to the end of my story and it's never gonna be gone. It's a part of me, but that's not a bad thing. If anything, I try to find what are the things about my life that have become positive because of what I went through. You know, I had PTSD. Well, that made it so I switched to a different shift at work. Well, that was switching to that different shift at work meant that I met my son's mom on a shift that I never would have worked at before. I literally picked up that overtime shift, and it was during the actual schedule I was on before I had PTSD. And I never would have met her, and my son wouldn't exist. And that was a hard thing. That took literally 3 years of therapy before literally one day, just the light bulb went off, and I was like, wow, I never even put these two pieces together. So sometimes it's as simple as finding like these negative things that are bringing us down, and how can I try to spin this in something of a positive light? I found that always really helped with me. It was a big step forward in healing, was just getting, like I said, taking my medication properly, not being afraid of it, not feeling that it's a weakness, but feeling instead that this is something that's just gonna help make me stronger and feeling a little bit more regulated. I don't ever like to use the word normal, because what is normal? Like, where's the baseline that we set as normal? Well, the only normal for me is just, am I happy? And I wasn't happy for a long time. I was really, really sad all the time, and I was always depressed, and I always never had the motivation or the fire to do anything. And that wasn't normal, I can tell you that much. But being at least happy, even, like I said, trying to do something, even if I fail at it and don't hit the ultimate goal, at least chasing that is giving me some reason to wake up every morning. That to me is normal. And I think a lot of people watching this might relate with that too. And I hope you do. You can relate that, like, hey, it is tough to wake up, and it's tough, but maybe you like painting, or maybe, you know, whatever it is. Like, I think it's important for us all recovering and working on our mental health issues to not be afraid. I'll just keep going back to it. To not be afraid to be selfish, like, because you're the driver of this vehicle. Like, this is your story. You're the star of your life story. Like, you're the star of this movie. We're all just bit parts, and we're just bit characters and role players in your life story, your movie. So, like, make it the best movie possible. Like, and I know it's hard to do that when you're in that moment, but you can slowly but surely change the script in your story if you really, really prioritize your own individual happiness above anybody else. And being from someone that was in such a regimented military, we don't like you because you sang, we don't like you because you care, and you refuse to call, you know, people that are, you know, the subjects of complaint on files. You refuse to just believe that guy's a total punk just because he's dealt with the police a few times. You want to know their names, and you say hi to them and shake their hands on calls. We hate that. Why are you doing that? You're just encouraging them to be bad. Well, no, I'm just showing them that they're human, like, that I appreciate them. But I was the black sheep. Like, I was a cop for 10 years, and majority of my colleagues didn't like me because I tried to be a different type of cop. And it broke me, but if I could go back in time and change it, would I change it? I don't think I would. And for a long time, I desperately wished I could have gone back in time and make all that PTSD go away and just do it completely different. And I had to really kind of accept and embrace the fact that, well, no, because it got me to the point I'm at right now, and maybe I'm going to be happier in the long run now than I ever would have been just kind of doing it that way before. So yeah, I don't know if kind of that, hopefully that makes sense to people that are kind of in the same boat, and at least you could see from a perspective of someone who tried to be a police officer for a long time. And in my heart, I always kind of still, I did that, and I had that job, and it was tough, but I'm glad I had that road, and I'm glad I kind of walked through it and that path that I had, because it got me where I am now. And yeah.
So we were hoping to get your advice on what you want people, what helped you through the toughest situations when you were at your lowest and darkest point with your mental health. What were 3 things that you would suggest people do to start pulling themselves out?
Yeah. If there was 3 things, I'd probably say the first one by far was actually just talking about it. Like, for a long time, I didn't even talk to my mom and tell her like the issues. And my mom and I have a really close relationship, and she's always been my touchstone. She's been someone I can talk to about anything. And I wouldn't even share with her anything that was going on. And I just kind of hid away, and I didn't want to share it with anybody. Actually, honestly, if I had to say 3 things, it would just be talk about it with one person. And number 2 is, if you feel comfortable enough finding one person you can literally talk to about even just the occasional problem, then talk to that person about more intense problems. And then 3, find another person that you can talk to. Like, because for me, I went through a few years where I didn't talk about it to anybody, and I was just burying each issue with the next issue, and they were just covering and covering and covering. And the first person I talked to before I could even talk about it with my mom was, I started actually seeing like a therapist through work, and I at least felt a little safe talking to that. But I think beyond just talking to a therapist, like, I think it's healthy for us to open up and be vulnerable, and actually, especially as men, find, whether it's your spouse or a family member or a best friend, like, find one person, just one person in your life that you can literally shed the layers of like protective cover that we have as men, where we want to be strong and big and brave and there's no problems with me, I'm good. Find one person desperately that you could just say, like, I'm not doing good right now. I am hurting and I'm sad and I'm upset, or me and my wife, are on a separation and I'm lonely and I'm depressed and it's hard. Whatever your issue is that's hounding you, like, find one person that you could just share that with, because you'd be shocked at how cathartic it can feel to actually just let it out a little bit. And the more you can get in the habit of doing that, like me talking to you about this today would have terrified me a year ago, let alone 3, 4, 5 years ago, when I first started realizing, like, yeah, I got some serious mental health issues I got to work through, and it's going to be a lifelong battle with my PTSD, and I'm going to have flare-ups and moments where I'm paranoid, or I think that people that I love and I trust are don't love and care about me the same, or they're just going to betray me. And it was really hard to accept that, like, this is something I got to figure out, and I got to learn my triggers. And I couldn't do all that by myself. I needed to find people that can help me through this process. And as men, that's our hardest thing, right? Like, it's really hard for us as men to admit that, like, I'm not okay, and I'm not He-Man, and I'm not Superman, and I'm not perfect. My sister said it to me best last summer. She said, the real hero is Clark Kent. It's not Superman. Like, Clark Kent that's the inspiring one. Like, that's the hero. He's the one that is going there and putting himself in danger and all this. Superman is just like this suit, and everyone thinks he's the brave one. But it's the Clark Kent alter ego. Like, that's the one you should aspire to be. The one that goes in and he's the one that can talk and show emotion. Superman's the one that's always big and strong and perfect, right? It's aspire to be the Clark Kent. Don't aspire to be the Superman. Accept your vulnerabilities and accept all those things about you that aren't perfect. Don't aspire to be this perfect example of what a man should be, because none of us are that. Like, and we try so hard as men to be that we're almost setting ourselves up to constantly fail and let ourselves down, let alone the people around us. We don't realize how much the people around us probably already admire what we're doing and are okay if we show that vulnerability. We don't have to be scared of being open. So that would be a long-winded answer of what would the 3 things be. It would be share, and share more. Like, try to find just one person
You can talk to. That's powerful. That a doctor as well told us the exact same thing. Talk, talk, talk. So reach out to the people that you feel safe with. What would have been supportive to you when you were struggling the most from the people around you that really love you and care about you? What could they have done to have supported you? If anything, it's possible that there isn't an answer to that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I never even contemplated that. Yeah, I'd like to think, honestly, before I probably would have thought nothing. Like, when I know I was in the moment. So anyone that kind of maybe is in that, especially those early stages of self-discovery on what they're dealing with, and still in those really, really dark all the time days, it's hard to really think that there's anything that anybody can do to help. I think the biggest thing was just, and people did start doing this and it made me feel okay, was really letting me know that I'm not a burden on them. You know, I would have times where, you know, if I had to miss a softball game and all I felt was I was letting people down, I was in a no-win situation. Like I felt a lot of times like I was painted into a corner because I wanted to just be in my safe little bed and just sleeping. And I knew, but I also had this obligation where I don't want to let down my softball team, but I was just having a broken day where I'm like, I can't get out of bed today. And so then I'm now in this vicious circle where I'm trying to make excuses and justify why I couldn't be there. And the biggest thing that helped me in some of those early days were somebody just saying like, hey, I get it. And I know kind of what you're going through. And I'm not experiencing it myself, but it's okay for you to feel this way, and making me feel that I'm not ruining everything no matter what I do. Because sometimes you kind of feel like you're damned you do, you're damned if you don't, right? Like you kind of feel you can't win. And that's when it gets really, really scary, because you're like, I can't win no matter what. I can't do good, I can't do bad. Like no matter what I do, I'm upsetting everybody. And then you just want to hide and bury yourself, and that's where it gets really, really dark sometimes. If somebody just can open up a little, let you know a little bit that it's okay and we're not judging you, and you know, like, yeah, you know, you had to call in sick yesterday. That's okay. I get it. Like, you needed to take a mental health day for you. Like, that's empowering. Like, it makes you not feel like you're the worst person in the world because you had to take a day off work for mental health. And partners and like a spouse or a loved one or family members, like when they can say those kind of things sometimes, you don't feel like whatever you're doing is detrimental to everyone's lives around you. Because a lot of times I think people with mental health, especially men, when we're in these mental health issues, like we're just wired the way we're wired, and we want to be protectors, and we want to help out, and we want to do the right thing. So we're being pulled in multiple directions, but we're also trying, especially if you're trying to like look after yourself. A lot of times people don't realize, like, that person that called in sick and made the fake, oh yeah, I got a tummy ache, but really they're just taking a mental health day. That person's actually making multiple steps towards recovery. Like, they're further along than some other people because they're at least recognizing that, yeah, like being at work today is not helping anybody. But in their mind, I guarantee you, they're still experiencing that feeling of like, I'm letting everybody down and I'm failing. So I think just letting them know, hey, you're not failing and you're doing good, and I'm here to help you any way I can. I think that is really, really helpful for someone that's in my position. If you're on the other side of the seat, just let us know that, like, it's okay. Like, I'm here in any way you need me. Like, I'm not going to set the rules or guidelines on how I'm here. I'm here because I love you, I care about you, and I'm just here to help. You tell me how I can help.
So we end all our podcast segments with the exact same question.
Okay.
And what we'd like to know about you is, what is one thing that you love about yourself?
One thing I love about myself is my heart. And I actually mentioned it kind of when I was talking earlier anyways, so that actually ties this full circle, which is really cool, is that when I got into the policing, I told myself, and I remember promising my little sister, and I promised my mom, I really had a goal of like, no matter what I go through, no matter how the horrible things I can see, I know I'm gonna change as a person. And this is before I went through anything bad, before I got PTSD. I don't wanna lose the kind person inside of me that always wants to kind of do the right thing and be a good, kind person to people around me. I wanna be the kind of person that my son could look up to. I want to be the kind of person that I want my son to grow up to be one day. And I'm very confident and proud to say that I don't think I've lost that in myself. I think I'm a good, kind-hearted person that even when it's hard, always tries to do the right thing and do right by other people. But over time, especially fighting my mental health issues and fighting this long battle with PTSD, I've learned to put myself as well and be kind to myself. And that was always the hardest thing for me, is I would be kind to everybody else, and I would never be like, what's gonna make Kevin happy in this situation? I'd be like, what's gonna make this person happy? And what's gonna make this person happy? What's gonna cause the least issues? And I thought that was being noble, and it took me a long time to be like, I'm gonna be kind to myself too. And I've learned to do that, and I think in general it's made me a better person. I'm a more tolerable person to be around. I'm not always frustrated because I made everyone else happy, but I'm not happy anymore and I'm not getting what I want. Now I'm just kind of like, hey, what's going to make me happy in this situation? And when I get that, I'm still going to do it with my head held high and being nice to everybody else around me too. But I want to make myself happy. Like, what's going to make me happy? I think that's the best part of me, is that, yeah, try to make everybody happy, including myself.
Andrew is known to his classmates and friends to have it all together. If anyone would be able to be cool, calm, and collected, it's Andrew. Andrew was a young doctor living in New Zealand. He had just started a new residency that was extremely difficult and demanding on his time, energy, and overall health. Though Andrew has experience in supporting his patients' mental health, he missed his own warning signs as his mental health was being impacted. Andrew shares his practical advice on this episode of Men's Mental Health in the Workplace.
So my name's Andrew. So I'm a doctor currently doing my family medicine specialty training here in Canada, but I'm originally from the UK, and I'm going to talk today a little bit about my own personal experience and journey that I've gone on with my mental health. So there was a particular time in my life where my mental health became a real challenge. So I'd just gotten married. I just moved to a fantastic new city. My wife and I were living together in our own place for the first time. So there were lots of really cool, exciting, but still very stressful things happening. And I also started a new job on a pediatric ward, so working with sick kids. And it's the first time I'd worked in that particular aspect of medicine. And it was something that I was really, really excited about, but I quickly found that it was making a lot of challenges on my mental health. So the hours were a lot longer than what I'd done before. It was a different area of medicine that I didn't feel as comfortable in. And as much as we, loved the new town that we'd moved to, we'd moved away from a lot of our sort of support network. We were over on the other side of the world from a lot of my family and my friends. And it was a gradual thing, but as I worked this job and did the long hours, I felt this kind of pressure building up. I found it increasingly difficult to switch off when I got home at the end of the day and distance myself from work. And I found one of the first warning signs is that I was just getting really, really tired and run down. I couldn't switch my mind off of work when I got home from in the evening, so it was really hard to get to sleep. And then I'd wake up early thinking about the day ahead, and then that gradually started to make things worse because I then wasn't rested, and I'd go back to work and I'd have busy, stressful days, and then I got worried that the tiredness was impairing me. So that gradually built up, and you get to the situation. It was a Monday to Friday job. But increasingly I found the weekends on Saturday I was just exhausted, and I had to spend the whole of Saturday recovering, and then I'd spend the whole of Sunday just dreading the week ahead. And rather than being able to rest and recover on the weekends, I felt like I was kind of going down. The weekends it would just sort of level out and I wouldn't feel any better, and then the next week it would start to go down again. And there was just this constant feeling of like pressure and almost like I best describe it as like a ringing noise, like a high-pitched ringing noise in my head that was just getting gradually louder and louder as it was dialing up. And in this job I was doing, I didn't have a lot of control over what I was doing and my role within the team. The team themselves were all really, really nice. But day to day, my role would shift massively. I was the most junior member of this of the pediatric team, and some days that's exactly what I was, and I was there and I got, you're here to learn stuff, you're here to learn about pediatrics, you're really well supported, come to one of the senior members of the team if you've got any worries. And there'd be that in kind of half the day, and then in the evening they were like, hey, so we're all going, and it's just up to you to look after these sick kids and take calls from family doctors calling in for advice, and looking after the obstetric ward and the neonatal unit. And it would just flip from day to day and shift to shift between those two things, so I didn't have that consistency of kind of knowing what I was getting into. But we were really busy, and I didn't want to let my new colleagues down. These were people that didn't really know me. And they were very glad when I first joined, because they needed the extra help on the busy wards. So I didn't want to let people down and not show up and not be able to do my best, because my priority was my patients on those wards, and I wanted to look after them. But it became increasingly difficult to be able to function and do the job. And then it eventually kind of reached a head where there was one shift where I had a panic attack at work. And I distinctly remember wanting to, I wanted to find somewhere in the hospital where I could be away from everyone and have a bit of a breakdown. But that pressure and that ringing in my head was so loud that I couldn't even make the decision of where to go, let alone make high-level decisions about how to treat sick kids. I couldn't even decide where to go in the hospital to have a cry. So I just had a breakdown in the stairwell, and I just sobbed in the stairwell of this hospital, and there's people walking past what's going on with this guy? And I phoned up my the attending, the consultant doctor that was on. I was just I cannot do this anymore. I need to go home. And the other doctor that was in the hospital that I was working with, his name was James, and he was amazing. He had quite a bit of experience with pediatrics, and even though that it meant for the rest of the evening he was going to be doing the job of two doctors, he was like, go home. I've got this. It's not perfect, but we can manage. It's more important that you look after yourself. I really appreciated that from James. So it took it coming to a head like that, and then I stepped back and I got some time off, and it was at that stage that I started kind of reaching out to people beyond just my wife to try and get some help. And I luckily was able to register with a family doctor. I managed to the attending that I called helped me get into a family doctor locally a little bit faster than I otherwise would have done. And he was great. He was super supportive and really understanding of what I'd gone through. And I think this is something that's quite important as well, is that quite often when you go and see your family doctor or a doctor at a walk-in clinic, they'll understand things on a professional basis, but a lot of people will understand you on a personal basis as well. The statistic that we get taught a lot and that always comes up is that of any profession, the highest rate of suicide is among doctors. So having trouble with anxiety and depression or whatever, there is a pretty high likelihood that if you reach out and you speak to a doctor, they're going to get it professionally, but they're also going to get it personally, either from themselves or everyone knows someone they went to med school with that's had some trouble. And I thought my mental health was pretty bulletproof. I came into this with coming into that job that I thought I could do anything. It had never been a problem before. In med school, my classmates always thought you're the guy that's always got it together. You're super calm and collected. But it doesn't always reflect what's going on beneath the surface. And even though all these positive, exciting events had happened in my life, they still put pressure on you, and they're still stressful. And so I think even if you're feeling guilty that you're I'm doing these things and I should be happy, this should be positive, those things will still be putting pressure on your mental health that you might not necessarily appreciate. There definitely was that like little bit of hesitation there, no matter how many times they drill it into you and you get taught all about, looking after your mental health in med school, both for yourself and for your patients. There is that block is still there. On the one hand, I don't want to, like I said, I didn't want to let my colleagues down, and I didn't want to feel like I was failing them and putting more work on them. And the other thing that myself and I think a lot of other medical professionals struggle with is that we see a lot of bad stuff, and we see people who we rightly or wrongly perceive are in a much worse position than ourselves. And if you think, well, this person's going through this, my struggles seem minute in comparison to what's going on there. And then there's also the role of the medical college. So our sort of professional body is to look after us, but also to look after our patients. And there's often a lot of worry and stigma that if you go and you talk to the college about what's been going on, and that you're worried about your own mental health, that then they'll look at that and say, oh, are you fit to look after patients? And to their credit, the college were fantastic. They were making sure that I was okay, and then they checked in to reasonably regularly to make sure that I was getting better, and then made sure that I felt ready to then return to clinical practice again. So they were really supportive, but no, there is definitely a bit of a block and a barrier, even for people that totally understand the mental health system. That still very much does exist. As much as the experience sucked, it felt horrible while it was going on. It's been really useful in a lot of ways that I now understand my early warning signs a lot better. Like I know what it feels like when my mental health is being pushed too far. So I'll stop exercising, I'll stop wanting to cook, I'll stop wanting to do social things with friends, like the things that I normally do that kind of like refill my cup. I step away from and stop doing quite so much. And now I cognitively recognize that like that is going on. This is a sign that something's happening. And I think I'm a lot kinder to myself in terms of my mental health. I recognize that, it's not a straight line. There are good days and bad days, and there are days when I feel a certain way and it reminds me of this bad experience. But I know that it can get better, and it's about, as long as like my general trajectory is still good, it's okay. But I know how to watch out for if it's going on like a downward slope, and I feel like I can make changes and catch it earlier than I could have done before. Whereas when it was all going on the pediatric ward, I was just like naively blundering through as if things were going down and down. Whereas now I can catch it earlier, and it's I'm not cured. I'm not going to stop having anxiety, and some level of anxiety is good. It's protective, but I think I can now recognize a lot better when it becomes a problem. You're never going to be able to fix everything for your partner, and when you love someone, you take on an element of like responsibility. You feel responsible for what's going on, and that's normal. But knowing that you're not going to be able to fix it entirely, and it's very rarely all down to you that this is happening. So I think like the role as a partner is more kind of like a facilitator to try and encourage your partner to reach out and find other sources. It's not necessarily completely healthy to be totally reliant on your partner for your mental health. You even in a marriage, you cannot be responsible entirely for your partner's health, be that both physical and mental. That's not fair on either of you. So I think and you're going to try things and they're not going to stick. It's going to be the nature of mental health, and it's going to be frustrating sometimes, and you're going to come up with ideas and be like, you should go and do this, and that could be a great idea. But if the person that's having trouble with their mental health isn't ready to hear that, that's not gonna land, and that's not either of your fault that it doesn't. But I think if you're making those suggestions and just being there for someone, when they're ready, they'll be able, those things will be useful. They'll be able to come to you and they'll take those suggestions. They'll still remember those things. They might just not quite be ready to hear it yet. So the great news is there's heaps of stuff out there, and there's more and more resources coming out all the time, and more free resources. A lot of stuff, when it was originally made, they put it behind a paywall, but they're increasingly realizing that's a terrible idea. And my main suggestion, like, the resources available will differ from area to area depending on where you are, and your doctor will be able to best guide you with that. But suffice to say, the best things are always speaking to your doctor, speaking to your family, speaking to anyone that you know that's been open about their mental health. In my experience, like, a lot of people, if they've spoken about it openly, they're pretty happy to talk about it and help other people. Looking online, there's always resources, but equally I appreciate a lot of that is the very nature of mental health. Is it becomes hard to access those resources and want to go through the process of doing that when you're struggling with your mental health. It's a real catch-22 situation. So the like simplest and most distilled little tip that I have is, when you're feeling, particularly with anxiety but also with depression, when you're feeling like your mental health is bad, try and make it so that your breath out takes longer than your breath in. It's a super simple little thing, but if you're taking more time breathing out than you are breathing in, that is helping to relax you, and it's really good for relieving really high stress. And if that can just release a little bit of that pressure valve that's building up inside of you, and just make it so that you take a few moments and then you're thinking a little bit more clearly, and then maybe you can think, hey, there was this resource that I heard about, or there was this person that I want to talk to, and I've taken a couple of seconds and I've just turned it down very slightly, and now I feel ready to do that. It's something that helped me, and maybe it'll help someone else as well.
So the last question we have is something that we ask all our guests, and the question is, what do you love about yourself?
I've got a really cute butt. Oh God, can we include that?
Yes, please. I was trying not to laugh. It's gonna be great.
Oh God, what have I done? Why did I say that?
My favorite.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, should I have said that? I mean, it's true. It's absolutely true, but
It's absolutely true. I like it.
okay, we'll leave it in. We'll leave it in.
Deal.
Hey everybody, my name is Kevin Roy. I'm one half of the duo Loops, big L, two small O's, a big P and a big S. You can find us at officialloops.com, it's a webpage, or official_loops on Instagram. I have a very, very special song that I'm hoping you guys will take the time to listen to right here. It's called Let Me. I actually wrote this song, speaking about everything that we talked about here today, as a pleading song written to myself when I was at the worst points of my depression, points where I wanted to give up, where I wanted to commit suicide, where I was very, very close to being a statistic as a police officer that would have killed themselves. And it was very hard to write, but I did write it from the perspective of what I needed to hear in that moment, which was just, whatever it is, any way I can help you, please just let me be there, let me help, just take my hand. I hope the song speaks to you as much as I've heard it spoken to other people that have listened to it. Sometimes you may feel that there's nobody that's there that's gonna help. Even if just listening to the words in this song gives you a little bit of hope and makes you realize that there's somebody out there that cares, it's accomplished its goal. So we hope you guys enjoy this. It's a very, very personal song for us. It's one of the songs on our debut album that's out right now. Please give it a listen, and if you like it, the best thing you could do is just share it with somebody else, because if it gets to enough people, hopefully it can make a bit of a difference. So this is Let Me by Loops.
Looking down at the crumpled paper, tear stains upon the sheet, blurry thoughts, unfiltered feelings, a side of you that no one sees. You're feeling so alone, like nobody's home. I wish you would talk to me, just talk to me. You thought it out how it would happen. You're not trying to quit, you just want peace. You feel afraid this isn't easy. Those deep thoughts won't let you be. You haven't lost a fight, I'm not leaving your side. I need you to talk to me, just talk to me. I want you to just see, it's okay, you're not your fault. You never deserve this. Life's not easy. Please just take my hand. Let me stand right by your side. I'll always have your back if you let me. I'm never gonna walk away. It's not an option for me. I'm not ready to say goodbye. I won't let you leave. I'm never gonna walk away. It's not an option for me. I'm not ready to say goodbye. I won't let you leave. I want you to just see, it's okay, you're not your fault. You never deserve this. I know that life's not easy. Please just take my hand. Let me stand right by your side. I'll always have your back. Please just let me. I want you to just see, it's okay, you're not your fault. You never deserve this. I know that life's not easy. Please just take my hand. Let me stand right by your side. I'll always have your back if you let me.
Indigenous men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than non-Indigenous men. Suicide rates are highest for Indigenous youth and young adults aged 15 to 24. In this episode, John Kruger, a former chief of Penticton Indian Band, sits down with us and shares a story of strength and resilience in overcoming intergenerational trauma. John speaks on the impacts and trauma in his life caused by residential schools. John's story is of healing and a message of hope for a better future. This is in regard to men's mental health. Men account for more than 75% of suicides in Canada, resulting in an average of 50 men dying per week. Evidence suggests that men also underutilize mental health services, with statistics showing that women are 3 times more likely to seek help through these services. On this episode, we discuss male suicide and depression with Dr. Ogrodnikzuk. Dr. Ogrodnikzuk is a professor and director of the psychotherapy program in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of British Columbia. In this role as director, he oversees the operations of North America's second largest medically based psychotherapy training program. His research has been supported by various provincial and national funding bodies and has led to more than 250 scientific publications, as well as the founder of Heads Up Guys, an amazing website dedicated to helping connect men to resources and services to address their mental health. Later in this episode, we meet Kristen. She recounts her experience of losing her father to suicide. This is in regard to men's mental health. Kristen's father was a strong, hardworking, and loving man. He displayed no signs of mental health struggles that would lead anyone to believe suicide was ever a possibility. Kristen's dad was a fantastic father to his children and gave his family great adventures and many happy memories. Kristen's story is filled with love and care for her father, remembering him for the man he was and not his death. You want to go for it? See what Ramsey says. You get this.
You were sadder today. That was good.
I didn't really tap in though emotionally. I was like, okay, I got this.
Didn't really tap in.
I was like, tap in. Will got good news. He's I'm so happy with your spot. It's warm. I'm sitting.
You're welcome.
Will got moved to the other class, and the bully got moved to the other.
Good.
Yeah, they switched him out. I know.
Did you say something or did they just?
I said,
Oh, good.
I was like, look at. I want to know what's happening.
Yeah, that's... What were the reasons?
They didn't really give me any. They just took care of it.
That's good.
It's confidentiality, right?
No, but they could have been like, oh, we made a mistake. But at least they didn't try to, they just fucking owned it.
You have a principal that you have a connection with. Mine, teaching it
Is
off
by the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So funny, we had to put all our names down for the new executive for the year.
Oh, yeah.
And because you have to send the form in to the district every year.
Mm-hmm.
And so Blair gave it to me, and I handed it in when we met for the first time, and he's like, "You're done already?" He's like, "Oh my god, I can't wait to call so and so and be like, hey, where's your form? I got mine in." I'm like, "And it came with a coffee." He's like, "And it came with a coffee." Okay, I'm just gonna look at my voice here. Hello. Okay. This is awkward. Okay. Men's mental health is a taboo topic. It isn't talked about as much as it should be. There is a stigma and a belief that men shouldn't talk about struggles they face. Society has an outdated view that men need to be tough. They just need to man up. Vulnerability is seen as a weakness. This couldn't be farther from the truth. Yet it is the belief that is preventing many men from seeking help when they need it the most. Men's mental health is a taboo topic. Men's mental health is a taboo topic. It isn't talked about as much as it should be. There is a stigma and a belief that men shouldn't talk about the struggles they face. Society has an outdated view that men need to be tough. They just need to man up. Vulnerability is seen as a weakness. This couldn't be farther from the truth. Yet it is this belief that is preventing many men from seeking help when they need it the most. Trauma and stress shape the brain's organization. When a person experiences a trauma, the brain goes into survival mode. Trauma can change the way we think, feel, and act. Repeated exposure to trauma has a direct link to mental health. Am I talking too fast?
You're going faster than I think you want to.
Okay. Trauma and stress shape the brain's organization. When a person experiences a trauma, the brain goes into survival mode. Trauma can change the way we think, feel, and act. Repeated exposure to trauma has a direct link to mental health. In this episode, we hear from Andrew and his wife Nicole. In this episode, we hear from Andrew and his wife Nicole. Andrew shares his story of DID, dissociative identity disorder, also known as multiple personality disorder. We hear the challenges Andrew and Nicole face together. They sharing? They share. Just they share? There?
I think we're sharing it.
Share or just sharing there? It says they sharing journey. Sharing their journey?
They shared their journey of finding healing. I think they shared their journey.
Sharing. No,
Yeah.
was it just sharing their journey?
Yeah, sharing.
Sharing their journey of finding. Okay.
Yeah.
Sharing their journey of finding healing and health. Andrew and Nicole discuss the difficulties they experienced while seeking services and help. In this episode, we hear from Andrew and his wife Nicole. Andrew shares his story of DID, dissociative identity disorder, also known as multiple personality disorder. We hear the challenges Andrew and Nicole face together, sharing their journey of finding healing and health. Andrew and Nicole discuss the difficulties they experienced while seeking services and help. This is in regard to men's mental health. There's too many S's. Right? Okay. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is a mental health condition that is triggered by a terrifying event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is a mental health condition that is triggered by a terrifying event, either from experiencing it or witnessing it. In this episode, we hear about mental health caused by the workplace. We introduce you to Kevin, a retired police officer, and Andrew, a medical doctor. In this episode, we hear about mental health caused by the workplace. We introduce you to Kevin, a retired police officer, and Andrew, a medical doctor. Kevin knew he always wanted to be a police officer since childhood, with a desire to help and support others. After experiencing many traumatic incidents on the job, the effects of his trauma began to impact Kevin's mental health. Kevin knew he wanted to be a police officer since childhood, with a desire to help and support others. After experiencing many traumatic events. After experiencing many traumatic events on the job, the effects of his trauma. After experiencing many traumatic incidents on the job, the effects of his trauma began to impact Kevin's mental health. After experiencing many traumatic incidents on the job, The effects of this trauma began to impact Kevin's mental health. Really don't like that. After experiencing many traumatic events on the job, the effects of this trauma began to impact Kevin's mental health. Kevin shares openly and honestly of his story of being diagnosed with PTSD and his journey to health and healing. Kevin shares openly and honestly of his story of being diagnosed with PTSD and his journey to health and healing. Kevin shares openly and honestly of his story of being diagnosed with PTSD and his journey to health and healing. This is in regard to men's mental health. Andrew is known to his classmates and friends to have it all together. If anyone would be able to be cool, calm, and collected, it is Andrew. If anyone would be able to be cool, calm, and collected, it is Andrew. Andrew was a young doctor living in New Zealand. He had just started his new residency that was extremely difficult and demanding on his time, energy, and overall health. Andrew was a young doctor living in New Zealand. He had just started a new residency that was extremely difficult and demanding on his time, energy, and overall health. Though Andrew has experience in supporting his patients' mental health, Andrew missed his own warning signs as his mental health was being impacted. Though Andrew has experience in supporting his patients' mental health, Andrew missed his own warning signs as his mental health was being impacted. Andrew shares his practical advice on this episode of Men's Mental Health in the Workplace. Andrew shares his practical advice on this episode of Men's Mental Health in the Workplace. Andrew shares his practical advice on this episode of Men's Mental Health. Indigenous men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than non-Indigenous men. Suicide rates are highest for Indigenous youth and young adults aged 15 to 24. Indigenous men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than non-Indigenous men. Suicide rates are highest for Indigenous youth and young adults aged 15 to 24. In this episode, John Kruger, a former chief of Penticton Indian Band, sits down with us and shares his story of strength and resilience in overcoming intergenerational trauma. In this episode, John Kruger, a former chief of the Penticton Indian Band, sits down with us and shares his story of strength and resilience in overcoming intergenerational trauma. Sits down with us and shares his story of strength and resilience in overcoming intergenerational trauma. John speaks on the impacts and trauma in his life caused by the residential schools. John's story is of healing and a message of hope for a better future. John speaks on the impacts and trauma in his life caused by residential schools. John's story is of healing and a message of hope for a better future. John's story is of healing and a message of hope for a better future. This is in regard to men's mental health. Men account for more than 75% of suicides in Canada, resulting in an average of 50 men dying per week. Evidence suggests that men also underutilize mental health services, with statistics showing that women are 3 times more likely to help through with statistics showing that women are 3 times more likely to seek help through services. With statistics showing that women are 3 times more likely to seek help through services. On this episode, we talk about male suicide and depression with Dr. Ogrodnikczuk. Dr. Ogrodnikczuk is a professor and director of the psychotherapy program in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of British Columbia. On this episode, we talk about male suicide and depression with Dr. Ogrodnikczuk. Dr. Ogrodnikczuk is a professor and a director of the psychotherapy program. Dr. Ogrodnikczuk is a professor and a director of Dr. Ogrodnikczuk is a professor and director of the psychotherapy program in the Department of Psychiatry at University of British Columbia. At the university. No, it's not the. At UBC. At UBC. That'd be nice. All right. Dr. Ogrodnikczuk is a professor and director of is the professor and director. But I took it off his website, so is that proper?
Oh shit, just do what he said.
Okay. Dr. Ogrodnikczuk is a professor and director of the psychotherapy program in the Department of Psychiatry at at University of British Columbia. In his role as director, he oversees the operations of North America's second largest medically based psychotherapy training program. In his role as director, he oversees the operations of North America's second largest medically based psychotherapy training program. In his role as director, he oversees the operations of North America's second largest medically based psychotherapy training program. His research has been supported by various provincial and national funding bodies and has led to more than 250 scientific publications, as well as he is the founder of Heads Up Guys, an amazing website dedicated to help connect men to resources and services to address their mental health. His research has been supported by various provincial and national funding bodies and has led to more than 250 scientific publications, as well as the founder of Heads Up Guys, an amazing website dedicated to help connect men to resources and services to address their mental health. He is also, let me try, publications. He is also, Dr. Ogrodnikczuk is also the founder of, okay, let's try that one. Dr. Ogrodnikczuk is also the founder of Heads Up Guys, an amazing website dedicated to help connect men to resources and services to address their mental health. I think I like that one better.
Yeah.
Later in the episode, we hear from Kristen as she
I said we meet Kristen. That's how I changed it. Sometimes I switch things up.
Yeah. Later in the episode, we meet Kristen and hear from her. How did you say that then? We meet Kristen as she recounts? That's proper English, right?
Yeah, that's perfect actually. Yeah.
Later in the episode, we meet Kristen as she recounts her experience of losing her father to suicide. Later in the episode, no, that was too happy. Later in the episode, we meet Kristen as she recounts her experience of losing her father to suicide. This is in regard to men's mental health. Kristen's father was strong, hardworking, and a loving man. He displayed no signs of mental health struggles that would lead anyone to believe suicide was ever a possibility. Kristen's father was a strong, hardworking, and loving man. He displayed no signs of mental health struggles that would lead anyone to believe suicide was ever a possibility. Kristen's father was a strong, hard-working, and loving man. He displayed no signs of mental health struggles that would lead anyone to believe suicide was ever a possibility. Held my breath for that last part. Kristen's dad was a fantastic father to his children and gave his family... Kristen's dad was a fantastic father to his children and gave his family great adventures and many happy memories. Kristen's story is filled with love and care for her father, remembering him for the man he was and not his death. Kristen's dad was a fantastic father to his children and gave his family great adventures and many happy memories. Kristen's story is filled with love and care for her father, remembering him for the man he was and not just his death.